These are heavy, but I bet they're gonna be delicious.
Hey, Artie, man, how's it going? Those are some giant Kit Kat bars.
Yeah, they are, which means, obviously, Mr. Jesse, it's going pretty well. My grandma just mailed these to me. She's a little forgetful, and all the stuff that she had for my stocking, she's lost. But luckily she found it, and it just arrived today. Isn't that great? Oh, man. She knows my favorite candy.
Well, I mean, that's great. I mean, those Kit Kat bars are going to last you till March. They're huge. I mean, that's great.
Okay. Sure they will, Mr. Jesse.
Well, listen, can I ask you what you're doing out here? I'm supposed to be doing the interactive.
Well, actually, that's why I was out here. I know you normally do the interactive,
Yep.
sometimes an experiment.
Yeah, the
so
experiments.
I was kind of looking for some supplies. I was thinking that you had some Tums or Alka-Seltzer or something.
Well, yeah, I think we do. We used some a couple months ago for an interactive that we did for the kids and teachers to do in their classroom. So,
well,
yeah.
I need to borrow some. I figure by the time I make my way through that third candy bar, I'm going to be needing some relief from my tummy trouble.
Well, hold on.
Yeah. You know what chocolate does to an orangutan's tummy?
Yeah, but Artie, are you saying you're really going to eat all that chocolate in one sitting? That's not a good idea. That's a lot of chocolate.
Well, yeah, of course I am. I mean, what other option do I have?
Well,
obviously, it's here. I love chocolate.
Yes.
Kit Kats are my favorite. I have to eat it now.
Okay, but don't you know what this month's big idea is? Has anybody told you the fable yet for this month? You know, the big idea fable that we do?
Is it diligence?
No.
It's the art of returning gifts that you didn't want in the first place.
No.
That would be a good one for the first of the year.
It's not that. It is self-control. It's choosing to do what you should do, even when you don't want to. Listen, I really need to get to the interactive, but since no one's told you the fable, I probably should.
You're talking about Aesop's fables, right? The guy that wrote a bunch of old stories, and each story had what was it called? A moral to the story.
Yes, that's great, and I'm glad you remember that, but here's the thing. We want to read the fable so we can help make the smart decisions. So today's called The Wolf and the Goat,
okay, awesome. Yeah, I bet I can picture this story coming to life right now.
Here we go. One day, a wolf was walking along when he fell into a well.
Got it. Wolverine is walking around and falls down into a well.
A wolf, not Wolverine. Why would you imagine me as Wolverine?
Listen, Mr. Jesse, I'm the one imagining the story, okay? And my imagination is limited on its costumes.
All right, sorry.
Maybe I could go this route. That seems worse somehow.
Yes, that is worse. Okay, let's just keep telling the story. Now, Wolf fell into the well and even though it wasn't very deep, he found that he could not get out. After he'd been in the well a long time, a thirsty goat came by. Now, the goat thought that the wolf had gone down into the well to drink, and so they asked if the water was any good. "The finest in the whole country," said the crafty wolf. "Jump in and try it. There's more than enough for both of us." So the thirsty goat immediately jumped in and began to drink. The wolf just as quickly jumped up on the goat's back and leapt from the tip of the goat's back out of the well.
Jumped on his back? That's one sturdy goat.
Okay, yes, very funny, Artie. The point is, the foolish goat now realized what trouble he was in. He begged the wolf to help him out, but the wolf was already way into the woods. "If you had as much sense as you have beard, old fellow," he said as he ran, "you would have been more cautious about finding a way to get out before you jumped in." Aesop writes that the moral of the story is to look before you leap. So, Artie, what do you think of the story that we told today of our fable, the goat and the wolf?
I think that goat would have had to have a steel spine if you were going to jump off of it.
Well, next time you should imagine a bigger goat.
Yeah, or I could imagine a smaller wolf.
Okay, Artie, can you please?
Sorry. I don't know, Mr. Jesse. It was a good story, I guess. I like the moral. Look before you leap. That's a good one. The goat really should have thought about the consequences of jumping, before he did it. It cost him a lot, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why this month's big idea is self-control. It's choosing to do what you should do even when you don't want to. And that's an important big idea to put to work inside of us to change the world around us, because when we practice self-control, it really helps us make the smart decision. That's one of our big three. you know? And making a smart decision just comes down to thinking about the consequences of your decisions. I mean, how would you feel if you ate all those Kit Kats right now?
I guess if I ate them all right now, I would feel pretty terrible.
Exactly. So when you stop and think, there's a lot of ways that we can practice self-control. Sometimes when we're practicing self-control, we might need to ask a parent or a guardian or a teacher to help us do the things that we might not want to do. Like, for instance, maybe you have a hard time doing homework as soon as you get home from school, but talking to your teacher or your parent and asking if there's some way that you guys could set up something to help you practice self-control. I mean, maybe it's something like a reward system where, you know, if you do your homework before dinner every night in a week, you know, you get pizza, or you get an extra hour of screen time, or something special that you like that would encourage you to practice self-control. Maybe you need to just think about the consequences to your decisions before you make them, and just make that a habit. Before you say something, before you do something, pause and think about what you're doing. Or maybe you need to help avoiding some of the things that you really struggle with, avoiding some of the temptations. Like if you really struggle with playing too much time on your video games, right? You have trouble practicing self-control. Talk to a parent or guardian about maybe setting up restrictions so that helps you. You know, I mean, maybe a good way would be asking Mr. Cody or another adult to help you maybe hold one of your Kit Kats so you don't feel tempted to eat them all too quickly. You know, that's a good idea practically you could do right now.
You know, Mr. Jesse, those are really good ideas. I guess when I think about it, as much as I might not want to wait on eating all of my Kit Kats right now, it probably would be the best thing for me and the smart decision.
I agree.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Jesse.
Artie, I'm always happy to lend you a hand, buddy. All right. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed our fable for today. Artie gets a little crazy sometimes, but hopefully you learned something about the big idea of self-control. It's time for the part of our video where we give you guys an interactive. We try to make this really simple so you can do it at home or in a classroom, and most importantly, we hope it helps you remember the big idea of self-control, which is choosing to do what you should do even when you don't want to, which, like we talked about with Artie, can be hard. For this experiment and interactive activity, all you're going to need is a couple bottles of water, some vinegar, some baking soda, and you might be thinking, hey, I've seen this experiment before, but we're going to add this time a balloon. Now, if you don't have any balloons, you can actually use a Ziploc bag and some tape, but for today, we're going to use a balloon. Now, we're talking about self-control, which is choosing to do what you should do even when you don't want to. We're going to let this bottle represent you, and you're going to fill it with vinegar. Now, if you want to make an experiment out of this, you can try different amounts of vinegar, different amounts of baking soda. It's important, though, that when you're working with an experiment, you pick one variable to change and make a hypothesis beforehand about what you think changing that one variable will do. Now, we're going to let this bottle with vinegar represent you and I, and we're going to let this baking soda represent something that might not be going our way, right? If we're going to remember our definition, we could say it's something that we don't want to do, something we don't want to happen. Now, when we don't have self-control and we go through life without it, we're kind of like this bottle and vinegar when we add the baking soda. It ends up making a pretty big mess. Gets all over everything. It doesn't smell very good, and you're gonna have a mess to clean up. But how can we use this as an example of what it's like to have self-control? What does it look like, and how is it different? Well, that's why I have a secondary bottle. Now, if you'd like, you don't have to do the first part. You can just do this one. It's actually pretty fun. Now, you'll take your balloon or your bag. You'll get some baking soda into it. The idea here is to take your balloon, or if you have to, you can use a bag, and put your baking soda inside of it. You don't need a lot, just about a spoonful. All right, so you'll take your balloon or your bag, set it off to the side, fill your water bottle about halfway or a fourth of the way with vinegar again. Now, this time, we're going to let this balloon represent what it's like when we have self-control. There's going to be things that happen to all of us that we don't like, we don't want. Sometimes things will go our way, and sometimes they won't. The question is, how does it look different when we practice self-control? what's cool is you'll see you have the same reaction. But instead of making a mess, we actually maximize the potential of this experiment. How cool is that? Now, if you are in science class with your science teacher, you can maybe figure out what it is that is filling this balloon. But I think this is a great example, isn't it, of what it's like when we have self-control. I mean, listen, there are still things that we don't like. There are still things that don't go our way. But the truth is, we don't end up making a mess, right? I mean, okay, let's think about it this way. We used our purple curtain earlier for Artie's imagination, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind if we used it again. I mean, come on, put yourself in a situation. The classroom, right? You're in the classroom and you really want to tell your teacher about something that happened this week. You're really excited about it. And as she's talking about the lesson plan, it pops up in your head and you think, hey, I should shout this out. Well, self-control, it's okay to say, hey, I really want to, but self-control is saying, listen, I need to raise my hand or I need to wait until the lesson is over and then I can share that. That might be really hard, but when we practice self-control, it works out better for us instead of us shouting out from the back of the classroom and maybe getting into a little bit of trouble. How about the playground, right? You're waiting because you really want to go on the swings, but there's a line in the swings. Now, you think about cutting in line, but you remember that that's not what you're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to treat others right, make the smart decision. If you cut in line, it's not going to lead to great things. Even though you want to, you're choosing to do what you should do. That might be difficult, but that is self-control. And if you do cut in a line, you might end up making a mess out of things. Or maybe this is the hardest one. Your little brother grabs your Nintendo Switch and he breaks the screen. You've told him 100 times to make sure he asks you before he plays with it, and he didn't ask, and you're so frustrated, right? Well, that's fair. Of course that's fair. But the truth is, at the end of the day, you could yell at him and make him feel bad. You might want to do that, but the truth is, it's not going to fix your Nintendo Switch. Practicing self-control is saying, hey, I'm frustrated by it. Maybe you need to talk to your parents and get some things figured out. But yelling at the person or making them feel bad isn't going to help at all. And it keeps you from making a mess out of things. Now, is self-control hard? It is hard. It's hard to stop and pause before you use words that aren't kind. And remember, you need to treat others right. It's hard to stop and realize before you go right to playing video games that you need to do your homework, but doing so will help you maximize your potential. And it's hard when you're faced with any kind of decision that's not going your way. It's hard to not stop and think about what does it look like to make the smart decision, to think about the consequences of our actions. But when we put the big idea of self-control into work inside of us, it can change the world around us for the better. And that is this month's big idea.